Hello and welcome guys, this is photography lesson 1. Today I'm going to talk about the difference between all those cameras and which one is really good for you. So as you can see that we have like the really big size all the way to the small size, but what is really the difference between the bodies? What is the difference inside the camera? What is the software? What is all the spec inside all those camera, and what makes you buy the big camera or the small camera? We're going to answer all those questions in this video. So let's start with the really big size. This is a DSLR Canon 60. This is a full frame camera. Now what really important about full frame camera, it gives you like the full frame of the image. So let's, for example, if we jump into this kind of camera, this is a crop APS-C camera. The sensor inside this camera are really cropped, so it's not as big as much as that. And now one advantage of having a really big sensor is like you get the most data information as possible. Also the depth of field, the noise, and all those kind of information, it's really better on the full frame sensor. Now there's advantage of having a crop sensor if you are like a wild photography, because the crop sensor, let's talk about the crop. So what the crop sensor really does, it's really crop into the image, so it's kind of like gives you that effect of zooming in. So you would have like a most close-up shot. That's great for wildlife photography and portrait, people who portrait photography. Now if you're not into those, or even you could still shoot in full frame and you get equivalent of the like for example, I have a 50mm lens on this camera. Now this 50mm will act and react a 50mm on this camera, but if I replace that same lens on this camera, it's not going to be the 50mm lens, because this camera has a crop sensor, so it's going to crop into the image and it's going to give you something like around, I'm not pretty sure, I'm not good at math, so it's going to be like around 80-85 maybe. So there's really difference between those two cameras, but they're both really great. You get out of those cameras really great photo, great video. Now the video is different, but for those specific two cameras are really the video are like really the same. Now when we jump into the actually before we jump into this kind of camera, there's a missing camera right here that called like a micro third camera. It's a much smaller sensor than the APS-C anyway, and there's also a bigger size than the full frame, but that's like more for the professional, and it's really expensive. So we have for example here the Canon G7X. This is a 1-inch sensor, so it's even much smaller than the full frame and the APS-C and the micro third. This is much smaller than all of those. So why may you asking? So you may ask me, but why would I get that instead of those kind of cameras, since they are better in sensor and better in, you know, size and everything? Well, you know, this is really for YouTubers and vloggers, and you know, people who like to take selfies. Now the image and the video out of this camera is really great, but it's not as much as perfect as those two kind of cameras. Now don't get me wrong, this is really perfect, good image quality and video quality, but it's not going to be as much as clear and good at those kind of two cameras. One thing, a really huge deal for people, vloggers, is the flip up screen. A lot of people would want to know what's happening when they're filming themselves, what they're doing, what they're not going to do. So it's really great. You could frame yourself with the flip up screen. Another downside for this kind of camera is like you have no microphone input. You only have the HDMI and USB, mini USB, but you have a Wi-Fi, I guess, on this camera, which is good. It's come in handy. Yeah, it does have a Wi-Fi. Those two cameras does not have Wi-Fi. Maybe the Canon 60 have a Wi-Fi, but it's really terrible. The Wi-Fi on cameras are really not that great. It's not as the same as the phone. So yeah. Other than that, really, and another downside for this kind of cameras, it's the lens. So those two cameras are really they are interchangeable lenses. So I could bring in this lens to put it here, I put that one here, and I could buy another lenses if I want to. A telephoto, a micro, portrait lenses. But with those kind of cameras, you're really stuck with whatever comes with the camera itself. So if it says, for example, here it says a 24mm to like 36 or something, and it's f2.8 all the way to like f4, I guess. So whatever is that, whatever you were gonna get, that's it. You cannot change the lens, you cannot change the aperture. But with those kind of cameras, you're really an open world. Whatever millimeter you want to get, whatever aperture you could get. Now let's jump into the very last kind of cameras. This is really small camera. This is the GoPro 7, Hero 7. This camera is really great for people who like to do like sport, sport event. It's more likely for video. You can use it for photo, yeah, but it's more likely for video. Now the sensor on this kind of cameras is even smaller than this with the 1-inch sensor, so it's really smaller. The images around, I would say the quality of the image is like around the phone, like your phone image quality. It's great because it's really wide and it's really small. This camera could shoot up to like 120 and above beyond that, which is really great for slow motion. And alright guys, before we end the video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you into the next one. Bye, peace out.